3. We're live. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 137 for Friday, 3rd of May of 2024. We do appreciate you tuning into our program tonight. We have 4 of our panelists. I'll be the chairman for tonight Friday program. We'll deal with some constitutional matters. And then we have Ms. Sharon Pitts, one of our panelists, and we have Mr. Gregory Brackett, another one of our panelists, and we also have Mr. Roody Wade, our next panelist. So I'm going to turn over to Ms. Sharon Pitts for her to bless our show with a short prayer, if you don't mind. Just bow ahead for a second, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Dear God, as we come together over the miles as Belizeans and friends of Belize and part of the earth and humanity, thanks for your
Amen.
blessings and all that you have endowed us with,
Amen.
food, clothing, shelter,
Amen.
etc., etc. Your healing hand on those who have benefited. And dear God, thank you every day for the bounty of the harvest, the water. Ask that you continue to guide us always. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Pitts.
Mr. Wade, could you do the prayer for us, sir?
Thank you, Mr.
Not,
Chairman.
not the prayer, I'm sorry, the reading.
Yes, thank
I'm
you,
sorry.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Pitts, for again being a part of our, our Belizean Affairs show number 137. So we have came a long way, and it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And we should be joined shortly by Gregory. Leonard, Mr. Chairman, I will continue on Ecclesiastes chapter 3, 10 to 20.
Go
It
ahead,
says,
sir.
I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart. Yet, so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. And I perceived that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his store. This is God's gift to man. I perceived that whatever God does endures forever.
Amen.
Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear, fear before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be, already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. I say in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart, with regards to the children of man, that God is testing them that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. For what happens to the children of man and what happened to the beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beast. For all is vanity. All goes to one place, all are from dust, and to dust all return. Who knows whatever the spirit of man goes upward, and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth. So I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his work, for that he is Lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? That's my reading, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wade.
Thanks.
Welcome, Gregory.
Good night, Greg.
Your mic, Greg, is muted.
Muted.
Good night. Good night to
Good
all the
night.
panelists.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Chairman. You need to
Good
lower
night.
your camera a little bit.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
I forgot to fix it when I. Um, okay. Section 18. Okay. Tonight I want to let me turn this thing sideways so I can make sure that I'm reading it adequately. Tonight I want to deal with some matters that relates to the Belize Constitution, dealing with the SOE and statutory instruments, as well as the provisions as outlined in the Constitution itself regarding emergencies and or how to deal with people by the police force. Under section, okay, Belize Constitution, Cap 4, Part 2, Section 18, deals with provisions for periods of public emergency. And I want to go ahead and read Section 18, subsection 1. In this part, periods of public emergency means any period during which, under paragraph A, it says Belize is engaged in any war. We know currently we are not engaged in a war, or at least at the time when the SOE was asked for and assented to by the Deputy Governor General, Mr. Stuart Leslie, on behalf of the Governor General, who apparently was indisposed. We knew at the time there was no emerging. Belize is engaged in any war. We knew we didn't have a war at that time. We do have a war right now going on the other side of our border. And I would think that that would have been the appropriate time for them to have launched this particular SOE or an SOE per se. But I'm definitely sure they will not launch an SOE to impact the northern border and to impact the two northern districts. We'll deal with that afterwards. I just want to continue the reading of this particular section. Under paragraph B, it says, there is in force a proclamation by the Governor General declaring that a state of public emergency exists. And for the Governor General to assent to a declaration of public emergency, the Governor General must be convinced that taking such a drastic measure as to authorize a temporary derogation of the basic rights and fundamental rights that are found in section in part 2, section 3, all the way through section 19 of our Constitution, which also incorporates section 20 as a guarantor for determining whether or not those rights are to be abrogated and or the validity of any convincing that has to be done in terms of validating the reason for a justifiable SOE. We'll deal with those as additional matters further on. I think I shifted this thing just now. I shaked it and it went awry. So please bear with me for a second. I need to go back up here where I was just now. While I was talking, I have a tendency to move, and when I move, my hands shake, and these electronic devices. Oh man, I told you. Okay. Belizeans at home and abroad, please bear with me. I'm getting a little frustrated here. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Finally. As in paragraph C of the same section 18.1 reads as follows. There is in force a resolution of the National Assembly declaring that democratic institutions in Belize are threatened by subversion. We know for certainty that we don't have any democratic institutions being threatened by subversion, or nobody trying to overthrow the government or any of its institutions. So there's still then at that point, under the third paragraph A, paragraph B, and paragraph C, there's no justification for an SOE to be granted and or to be considered, because we do not have any emergency as such as a war. We don't have any emergency such as the National Assembly having to declare that the arms of government are being threatened by any military entity inside the country with a subversive effort, or that the Governor General was convinced by whatever means by the people who launched the SOE and who stipulated after they launched it that the reason why they launched it was to do police work, because the police minister and the police commissioner and his subordinates apparently are unable to exercise their already vested power of arrest to go and arrest the people who are causing problems in the country. Sharon, you wanted to say something just now?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, okay. No, I thought maybe you wanted to add something to what I was saying just
No,
now.
somebody was
That's all right.
hailing
I understand
a
that.
young person with a lot of voice.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I'll just read another little piece here quickly, and then we'll let's see. I wanted to go to section 2. under subsection 2 of the same section 18, it says the Governor General may, by proclamation, which shall be published in the Gazette, declare that a state of public emergency exists for the purposes of this part. We know we don't have any war going on. We don't have no subversive internally or externally. And we don't have any government department being taken over or under the control of any forces that require an SOE so that the military forces can then come in and take back our governance property and or governance department. There's also another section here on section 2A, which reads as follows: that a state of war between Belize and another state is imminent, or that a public emergency has arisen as a result of the occurrence of any earthquake, which we don't have, any hurricane, which we don't have, flood, which we don't have, massive fire burning down cities and villages, which we don't have, or outbreak of pestilence, which we don't have, outbreak of infectious disease, which we had recently, or other similar calamity. Does the police have a problem in terms of a calamity in the country, or in these particular sections where they have begged for and authorized this bogus SOE, bogus in its structure, bogus in the purpose of which they themselves just willy-nilly or arbitrarily and capriciously decide to classify their policing effort as an SOE so they can go in there and brutalize and vandalize people's property and brutalize civilians who have nothing to do with the SOE. That's an overreach. That's why the Constitution forbids the government from being able to arbitrarily and capriciously make any law that derogates people's constitutional right. It requires that if the government wants to take those powers into themselves, they have to come to the plebiscite first and have, as the Constitution says in the Representation of the People's Act, they are mandated to have a plebiscite and get that authorized power, which is currently vested in the people, from the people by the people's consent, not by them willy-nilly just declaring that they want to have an SOE to solve their policing problem, that they are not doing a proper police work. But I'm taking up too much of the time up front, and we have three other guests on the program tonight, and I just want to turn over firstly to Mr. Weird for a quick comment, and then we'll take some short comments. Mr. Weird, Sharon, and then Greg. Mr. Weird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
Again, it's a pleasure to be in your all company, and again, like you says, the topic that we are, talking about again tonight. You stated as to how a state of emergency shall come about. And you're so right, because I go a little bit back in the 70s. The first state of emergency I knew there, because there was looting and burning down because of the Guatemalan issue we had, and that was, to me, that had been a valid one of the valid reasons for a state of emergency, but the ones that I have been seeing lately, I do not see any major concern for them to have, go that way. But as we are, been saying, that's not going to be the first nor the last, because nobody hold these guys to challenge for what they do unconstitutionally. So I'll make it short. So based on everything that they're doing. Um, so I say this to say, shouldn't we be having a state of emergency up north as I speak? And I turn it over back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wade, and you're
Short
well
and
important
short and
to point out that one about the
yeah.
need for an SOE up north, even though we know that they will not want to do that because they're not going to derogate any rights for the people up north, because that's where the Prime Minister's main constituency is. But we have a major problem up north, as they all have been declaring. In fact, the other day, they went to the House and got $1 million to help fight the problem up north. The money disappeared, and we still haven't gotten any report as to what it got used for, and how come the problem is getting worse rather than getting better. Sharon, I'd like to yield to you for a short comment on what I presented earlier, if you don't mind, please. Sharon? I'm not sure. Um,
Hello.
yes, yes.
Yes, I think this matter is very, very important. It goes to the heart of our fundamental rights and freedoms, somewhat referred to as the Bill of Rights within constitutions such as ours.
Mhm.
It goes back to theories of state, John Locke and the others, where people basically you yield up to a certain extent your fundamental right to absolute liberty to
Mhm.
the effect so that you can have good and orderly government.
The state.
I believe that in listening to you gentlemen and the way you have presented this, Mr. Brackett, I wanted to make just a couple quick comments. It is that one, I just wanted to clarify where it refers to similar calamity, as you pointed out in reading the section 18, subsection 1A, and you mentioned earthquake and flood, fire, peril, and so
Yes.
on. So we would see those as limited to more act of gods or so happenstance, sudden type disaster, pestilence, infectious diseases, and so on.
Mhm.
Some people might say bad government and ministers behave in a way as though they're not within the law or outlaw. That would be the worst calamity that can happen to a democracy.
Okay.
Now, what we have is a rule of law. It's interesting that both of you gentlemen exampled or highlighted rather a serious situation up north, which has not been responded to by a state of emergency. And that is something that begs the question. And I hear your recommendation that it might be applied there. If I heard a snippet of news interview tonight, it was with the minister, the police minister, to effect saying that the state of emergency was successful. And although the measuring stick had to do with, I believe,
Oh, man.
solved a couple murders. I don't know if they've been solved or the persons, people have been arrested and perhaps will be charged. And then it was that the compol wanted to extend it because apparently he had a certain view and the government did not agree to that. Now it seems to me that it must be made very, very, very clear to citizens of Belize and those visitors who come to the country and those who deal with the rule of law. The Constitution speaks to state of emergency. It does not speak to a police state of emergency. Belize is a constitutional democracy. We're a parliamentary Westminster system with the rule of law and separation of powers. We're not a police state. Whatever Bukele is doing in Salvador, even if 100% of people vote for him, they have their own system, a civil law system, where people are presumed guilty and so on. He can keep lawyers away from voting people so he can suspend rights. No Belizean, Mr. Brackett, I think you hit the nail on the head. None of us, individually or as a whole, would surrender the rule of law for any police state. I just wanted to say quickly that this is disquieting. What the way you all characterize it, it's that, you know what comes to mind? Let me put it this way. You know, the Constitution has a formula for people who are suspected of being involved in crime, and it ought to be the quality, the standard is reasonable suspicion for you to be deprived of your liberty. And the Constitution guards us in this separation of powers, judiciary, the police, the executive, the administrative, and the judiciary. And it only allows 48 hours where it's reasonable. It has a formula for someone to be detained, following which that person should be brought before a magistrate or a court of law. So you see, the Constitution limits and guards again, protects very zealously against excess or any breach by the police part or the executive of the fundamental right of freedom. But under the machinery, and I think Mr. Brackett, Greg, I think you coined this phrase and you put it very well, and I think you asked me to deliver that as a question too. That a section so and so of the Constitution should not be used, or some law rather, as an attempt to bastardize the Constitution. Well, a state of emergency should not be used to do violence to our constitutional freedoms. The freedom-loving people of Belize will protect the freedom of our country. The constitutional loving people of Belize, those who cherish and protect our freedom, which came out of 1,000 years and is considered second to none in the world. The whole parliamentary democracy, that is what they are taking and attacking, and it's a slippery slope. When we say a slippery slope, you know what a slippery slope is. You're up on an ice-covered mountain and you're going downhill. You're up on a mud side, a mud bank, and you slide downhill. You walk on the street and walk on a banana peel. So basically, sorry to be so long, right? But I think it's very crucial that and you have to watch these people, right? El Salvador, not that far from Belize, right? And if we have the need for a state of emergency, protect the people up north, protect the country up north. It begs the question. I'll say no more.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That was a very lucid and a nice presentation. Also, what I would like to contribute in addition is that nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the government is supposed to institute SOE or state of emergencies in lieu of police work, because the police authority has police powers authorized to it to go and pick up any potential criminal or any of the people that they know have been committing crimes and are the ones who are leading the so-called gangs that they make these laws to try and suppress. Nowhere in our Constitution does it say that the government has any power to go and collect large groups of people in the community and just put them in jail for 30 days, which is contrary to the Constitution, as Ms. Pitts just cited, that you have 48. Initially, you have 24 hours, depending on what charge it is, and up to 48 hours again for the government to get this act together if it's a big issue. But nowhere does it say that you have the authority vested in you as the government to just willy-nilly issue a SOE for 30 days, and then like the idiot Mr. Chester, who is the commissioner of police, as well as a lawyer himself, who's supposed to know that you cannot just arbitrarily and capriciously, as he stated, if the judge let the people them out before the 30 days up, if they get bail or whatever, or they have lawyers or whatever, the ones that don't have lawyers, they just sit there and wait the 30 days out. But for those who have a lawyer to go and get them out, because they have been falsely arrested and in prison, he went turn around, according to him, and rearrest them again. He is a member of the bar and an officer of the court. Where does he get out this fancy idea that he, because he's occupying also the position as commissioner of police, that he going to use the powers of police to arbitrarily go and violate a court order, which is when a court gives a person back their freedom for being wrongfully arrested, that he, Mr. Chester, go somewhere, have some power in his pocket that he could go and rearrest them people again for another 30 days. Is he crazy or just stupid? Or does he think that we don't know what time of the day it is or what the laws are? As I said, for more than one reason, some of his colleagues need to go and arrest him for committing crimes under the color of law. Just like how you want to go arrest other people for committing crimes in the society. But I'll leave it at that because I need to stop violate Greg's opportunity to weigh in on the subject matter. Yield back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
Good night to the Belizean people at home and abroad. I have said before in this show that there are many times when the present government passed new laws and aside, and many of us have not gone to read what they have in it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say tonight that the state of emergency under the SI that was passed is totally inconsistent with the Belizean Constitution. And this topic will not go away because I will just point out about 3 sections to show you the inconsistency. I will also like to say that under the state of emergency, the police is picking up these young men and what is being called arbitrary detention,
Mm-hmm.
which is also
Unconstitutional.
unconstitutional. Okay? But let me say this first. I have ciphered through the SOE and I will just go to section 10. Power of questioning. Number 10. Every person is so required by a police officer shall stop and answer to the best of his ability and knowledge any question which may be reasonable addressed to him by the police officer. When have that ever come about?
The
That
Constitution
we
does not allow
are-
for that. Power grab.
Right. No.
Sorry, I'm not sorry. I always chide people. Forgive me when we laugh at things, but it's like utter shock. Mr. Greg, that just utter shock. Go ahead, please. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Ms. Pitts, they are trying to sensitize us for what is to come. If we think that what we are talking about right now is so bad that we have to be talking about it, imagine what's going to happen
And
when they get off
golden
the side.
and feature of the presumption of innocence. The only thing you have to tell police, as I always tell my client, if they want, your name, and after if you reasonably, then detain you. Your address, maybe occupation, and maybe your
It
age.
goes beyond that.
Presumption and right to remain silent. They're not in business.
Right. But it goes beyond that, Miss Faith. And we have dealt with this, especially me and you, when we are dealing with civil matters, right? Etc. Now, I want you to listen to this inconsistency.
Just before I go on, please, Mr. Greg, sorry, no. Remember, I mentioned very clearly on one of these programs that the police have been taking it upon themselves to say they will interview people, even when attorneys such as myself have very clearly indicated to them our client's instructions and the Constitution. So that is wrong, 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 wrong.
But
It's not a police
get
state.
arbitrary and capricious, though. They feel like
Miss Faith,
I'm sorry.
I personally would like to know where are the bar association. We had a person from the bar who had wrote a letter about arbitrary detention and the commissioner cried foul. But let me go to section 12 of the SOE. Above it, it says application of section 19 of Belize Constitution. In regards to say under section 19, you have section 20 where you can seek judicial review. But this is what section 12 says about section 19. The provisions of section 19 of the Belize Constitution shall apply to any person arrested and detained under these regulations. Now, if you listen to that,
Sorry, can you repeat that, please? Sorry, Mr. Greg, please repeat.
It says, Ms. Pitt, the provision of section 19 of the Belize Constitution shall apply to any person arrested and detained under these regulations. Now, Ms. Pitt, I want to bring back to you when you was last and Belizean, when you was last here and Belizean affair, when you was asked a question by Mr. Gregory Morrison, and we had the conversation about habeas corpus, what he said. And I want to bring it back to you because under section 15, bail and habeas corpus, section 2, the writ of habeas corpus shall not
Well, let me tell you what. Well, if they explore this Constitution, I will tell you this, that anything that goes against that and goes against Houston, the jurisdiction of the court, is illegal and void, and the courts, a proper court, will cut it out. And incidentally, let me tell you this. While you all weren't seeing me, one of the things I was doing was I filed a writ of habeas corpus on behalf of somebody who had been treated a certain way out there. The quiet calf sucketh the most milk. They cannot cut out the Constitution because, as we have said before, if you were to leave it to people who would go against the Constitution, they would try to write the Constitution itself out of existence. That is why the Constitution is protective. And I will tell you this.
That's what they're after right now.
I want to tell you something, right? I was so delighted. I was dealing with a non-Belizean client, and in saying to him, reassuring him that we have the rule of law. So remember, America was a colony and the same common law and so on. So I love Latin. I can't remember the Latin, but he sent me something one day. And it was, I'll say it in the English way, it's basically to the effect that where there is a right, there is a remedy. That is so beautiful in law. Because whatever anybody brings any government, any functionary of the state, any charlatan, any dictator would be dictator. Anybody who wants to be, what you call it? When these people become like tyrants, right? We had said long ago, no tyrants shall linger, despots must flee. They're invited to go somewhere else. There are other countries, El Salvador, all over the world, China, etc., where you have dictatorship. They are free to visit and stay. But to focus on it, they cannot use the jurisdiction of the court. And they cannot state that the Constitution will not apply. The Constitution will strike that down. Remember when you all mentioned, and you as lay people, but reading in law, brought it to the center focus, not me. And then, of course, me with my legal training went over it and, in a more incisive way and bringing that to bear, offering that they would pass laws to go against the very Constitution and have done that. And what the court say. So if you pass a law saying that habeas corpus, you to try get rid of the writ of habeas corpus, didn't I describe what that was? When my father, BQ Pitts, and another attorney presented a writ of habeas corpus, I don't quite remember the name of the man, but it was a man who came from one of these dictatorship countries. But when he was a first generation, making Belize his home, or he might still have had foreign nationality. But when he was faced with a problem, I can't get into all the details, but them done got in a Belize International Airport on the stairs of a plane to take him out of the jurisdiction. And you know what helped him? A writ of habeas corpus. And I will tell you, you know why they try attack that habeas corpus? You know why? Because they know that there are watchdogs out there for the Constitution. You notice how I said, and interesting, because Mr. Greg Morrison, I had a little note. I said, man, I hope, stay away, because sometimes I answer and maybe I sound like a bully. But his relative, Mr. Golson, used to say you have to know what questions to ask when you're navigating the subway, as he did when he did not have vision. And the quiet way Greg asked the other Morrison, asked those questions, brought out that. But the habeas corpus, where there is a right, there is a remedy. And the courts will protect the Constitution from dictators, from rogue politicians, from police who want to institute police state on the people. And the right of any Belizean, even visitors and strangers to this country. So the man who was on the plane, I think it was a Taka airplane. That is a classical example, and a writ of habeas corpus. Now we have the basic formality for it. I don't have one to show you. You know what is one of the features in it? When it is directed whether to the commissioner of police or the superintendent of prison, you might say John Brown, you might have a spelling, or they might have some alias, another name. Within the writ of habeas corpus, it has or by any other name. So, I say defective because that a person before the court will cure that, and the court is ahead of them.
Right.
They cannot write out a writ of habeas corpus. These people are playing with fire. And you know what? When you start to infringe people's freedom, the same instrument where you use to attack the freedom are the least of the apostles out there. Why we protect people's freedom? Because our Constitution and our liberties only as good as when we protect the least of the brother out there. So attorneys, constitutional attorneys and attorneys are meant to be good Samaritans. The law, the Constitution is that good Samaritan. And in addition, the countries have rights, people have rights. And it's the duty of every citizen to defend the rights of Belize.
Ms. Pitts, if I may, let me finish just the reading to bring to your attention, because this is why I always say to people, read when an essay starts. Read when a law is passed. because you will get trapped in it. Anyway, it says in section 2, the writ of habeas corpus shall not lie in the case of any person detained, any person denied bail by or under sub-regulation 1, and no jurisdiction to grant bail in the case of such denial shall be exercised by any judge of the Supreme Court under any rule of law or other
Sorry,
authority.
please repeat that.
Now imagine,
Please
Greg,
repeat it.
Greg,
Repeat it. You have
repeat
to
the last
repeat
part.
it.
Repeat the last part. Yeah. And after that, I have a comment to make before
it
the
says,
comment becomes stale, no? I'll be
it
waiting for a
says,
little while.
and
Yeah,
no
Greg,
jurisdiction to grant bail in the case of such denial shall be exercised by any judge of the Supreme Court under any rule of law or other authority. Now, I
section
would
20.
want to say this, right? Not only is this unconstitutional, and they think they are really bastardization
Hold on,
of
hold on, hold on.
constitution,
Let me tell you the quick thing,
because,
please.
Miss Faith, the Referendum Act is still there to protect our constitutional rights in section 2.
Hold on, Mr. Brackett. Hold on. I don't want to get the waters muddy, right? We can't get ahead of ourselves, right? We cannot get ahead of ourselves. It's simply that you cannot use the jurisdiction of the court. You cannot. And the answer is simple, crucial. And however, if you want to write 10 pages or say it in a way, sometimes you have to be able to focus on the 60-second defense of the Constitution. You cannot use the jurisdiction of the court. The Supreme Court of Belizean, called the High Court, is a court of original jurisdiction.
That's what I was about to read.
Nothing can use the jurisdiction of the court.
Sharon,
Nothing and no one.
Sharon. I was about to read a part just now that you just quoted, Sharon, but I need to get the point that I wanted to make before. That is that these people that are making those laws are making those laws on behalf of the legislators. Well, they write the legislative document so that the legislators then go and vote on it, not knowing the significance and the seriousness of what is it that they're doing and the transgression that is committed. But the people who write those things are legal drafts people.
I disagree with you respectfully. Hold on, Mr. Brackett. This important, man.
No, but Sharon, I need to establish the point before I can't lose the point. I need to establish it. That's why I'm trying to go with it. These people who are legal draft person, if they are lawyers, they are officers of what? The court. They cannot be representing something that the court finds illegal and would not entertain, and a violation and writing the court out of existence. The Constitution does not allow for that to happen. But these people are trying to jump in the separation of powers situation and order the court how to rule. That's untenable. Not only that, but order the court as to whether or not the court even have any validity or any justification.
I agree with you fully with that, Mr. Brackett, but what the part that you introduced it with, it might give the person who maybe has less ability to understand and analyze than any of us, or sometimes they go straight to the point, mind you, right? What you said might give the impression that the legislators don't know what they do. Well, you could count the amount of attorney legislators we have in Belize in the parliament right now. They well and fully know. And even a politician, we pretend they don't know, that then the instruction come from legal draftsmen do not write laws unless they come from parliament. Legal draftsmen do not introduce laws into parliament. Legal draftsmen who are in government service And that is why you say, and it's another thing, right? But I didn't get into it when you all were saying certain things about constitutional right of public officers to be involved in party politics. But I want to explain something another time with convention and the constitution. So it protects against these very situations.
But I want to go back to that same point again, Ms. Pitts.
Hold on, Mr. Brackett. If I was an attorney, legal draftsman, you couldn't give me that law for right. And I will tell you, my ancestor B.Q. Pitts, when the then Prime Minister, Dean Barrow, could say at a press conference, when the government was considering extending the detention period beyond 48 hours to curtail crime or something, I remember he said right then and there before the thing, the Attorney General does not agree with me. Well, I noticed too that by way of coincidence or so, BQ Pitts was not Attorney General for much longer. But as my father used to teach me, when you swear to an oath of office and either your friends or your enemies would have you go against the oath, stick with your oath of office and hold fast. You can serve your country the best way that.
Okay. Now I want to go back to the point though. That is that I did not get to complete my statement, but I'll try and attempt to do so right now. And that is that our learned Mr. Barrow, while being the Prime Minister and being a senior counselor at that, was one of the same person that mischief made the inclusion of section 69(9) into the Constitution, as well as section 2 2 you had section 2(1), and then he included 2(2) to override 2(1). Basically, another power grab. What I was saying earlier, I did not get to complete the statement because I was just making partial statements one after the other in a sequence. But had I been given or had the opportunity to complete my thoughts, I would have clarified and cleared up and specifically ended up with that as the end thought. The people who write these things and put these things in the Constitution, whether it's written by the draftspersons or whether it's initially initiated and advised by the legal, because in a government you have a lot of lawyers, okay? Plus the government have its own battery of lawyers under the purview of the Attorney General, as well as under the purview of the DPP, and they can get private lawyers, as a matter of fact, as in the case of Mr. Jerosevic and Mr. Mendes or whatever. Whenever they have to deal with any legal substantive matters that is beyond their level of knowledge, or they want to impress somebody, then go for and spend the big money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then get the big powerful people in. But at the end of the day, Mr. Mendes' thing was still faulty, was still anti-constitutional. But that's what they went with because it served their purpose. My point is that these people are officers of the court. And if they are going to try and legislate out the court out of existence, it tells me either they don't believe in the separation of powers, or they're deliberately attempting to become dictators. That is, to hell with the Constitution, and whatever comes out of their mouth at any given time, under whatever ministry, that's the law of that ministry, and that's the law of the land. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. I yield back, Greg. You was about to say something else in addition, and then me and Sharon was going back and forward on the other point. No?
Yes.
Your time, sir. I yield your time to talk to you.
Right. And also, I can recall after reading the SOE, the stopping and taking of people pictures. Now, as Ms. Fitz said, it's not the draftman who do these things into law, but let's go back to what one of the legal person who is the Minister of Police had said, Mr. Karim Musa, that he does not believe in that. He has specified that. But I want to say the arbitrary detention is even in violation of the Police Act. So we have to look also the Criminal Code 101. You know?
Excuse me, Mr. Greg,
Yes,
I'm listening, but I'm asking you to repeat that, please. And there's a reason, because when rights are being taken away, so when you're reading, certain things would have been all right if they should have been said, saying that the court's jurisdiction will not be used, right? That's why I asked you to read again, so that it comes off
right.
very clearly,
Okay,
right?
let me
Please,
say it, right?
please repeat the last part again, right?
In regards to picture taking, which is unconstitutional, the Police Act Chapter 138 specifies in Section 19, it shall be lawful for the competent police authority to take or cause to be taken and to record for the purpose of identification the measurements, weight, photograph, and prints of all persons who may from time to time be in, the word is, lawful custody. So
Greg,
when they're
oh, sorry.
stopping people on the street and taking pictures, it is unconstitutional. And as I was saying, the Minister of Police, who had a talk with news reporter on this, testified that they did not condone it. Also, let me finish by
Uh,
saying this. The detention, the arbitrary detention, goes against the Belize Criminal Code Section 69. Because here it says, a person imprisons another person if intentionally and without the other person's consent, he detains the other person in a particular place of whatever extent or character, and whether enclosed or not, or compel him to move or to be carried in any particular direction.
okay,
So
Greg,
again,
Greg, you, uh, you changed the point just now by bringing up that this point that you're on currently. You changed the previous point that I wanted to comment on, and it, uh, it's going to look disjointed when we do it like that. That's why when a
well,
particular
go
point is
ahead,
made.
sir,
Wait. When a
because
particular
I
point is
was
made and somebody wants to
speaking
contradict it,
specifically
you
at
know.
first
Yes, they're
about
all part of the same
the
thing.
picture
Everything that you're
taking.
saying is part of the same
Right.
overall thing that we're discussing. But I just wanted to weigh in specifically as regards to the picture taking and the taking of the vital statistics of the individuals in terms of recording the person as a detainee. What they're doing is exercising the powers, the customary powers and practices of the police department in-house operations. They're taking it out to the street and conflating it and using it and abusing people's right to not be profiled. It's a different thing altogether. But they are abusing the process and they are making it seem like they are authorized to gather that information under whatever circumstance, which is not the case. They are conflating, and what they're doing out on the street is illegal, just as how Mr. Musa said. As you are saying, I'm saying, Ms. Pitts and anybody else who understand and deal with the law would say that's an illegal act. But
I
because
want to
they're
make a
authorized
comment.
or allowed,
Excuse me, but
to,
I want to wait till after you, Mr. Brackett,
answer
and
right
then
now, answer
Mr.
right
Brackett.
now, answer
And
right
say
now.
Mr. Wade was a police officer, no? But
Uh,
just
uh,
give me like a
one,
half
okay,
minute at
okay,
some
make a finish,
point in
make a
future, right?
close it out then, make a close out that.
No, but not to cut you short
No, I
because
understand you. I heard you already.
mhm,
Thank you very much, Sean. I just wanted to hurry and finish so that I could move on to what you were saying. No,
mhm.
what I was saying is that the process and practices of policing allows for the police when they take you to a station, for example, let's say they arrest you out on the street or whatever, and they process you to a station, and the recording officer is going to take that information into the books, and they are putting a line up and they are whatever, blah blah blah, whatever all they do. That has always been accepted as legitimate police endeavors for the record purposes. But they're taking that action and something that's allowed for or accepted as being all right in-house inside the police jurisdiction, they're taking it out in the general public and assaulting the general public, just about anybody. In fact, just the law that you read just now that they're putting in place, that the police can stop you and ask you any question. Now, who is to tell or who is to validate whether or not that question is a valid question or not? Not you, the individual who have this right, and the Constitution protects your right to not be infringed on by a police officer or any agents of government. But they will decide, well, the police officer decide in his own mind what the question is, and you have to answer to whatever that question. That is unconstitutional.
My good cousin, if I may, just before I go to the speech.
No, Mr. Wade first, then they could come to me. Unless
the police have been doing arbitrary detention for a long time now, where they pick up individuals and instead of investigating first to see if a crime was committed, they hold these individuals unlawfully for 48 hours
and more,
only to release them at the end of 48, well knowing they have not committed a crime. And that is where our good friend, attorney at law, had spoken about it. And I just want to go to the tape so the people can hear.
And when I was told why they were being held by the police, I thought I had to intervene on their behalf. The instruction that I received is that there was a young man who entered his apartment after there was some effort to evict him, took his items out of the apartment and gave them to the two young ladies who were detained to hold for him. Again, I'm instructed that the owner of the apartment went to make a report to the police, and from that report, the police understood that the items were hers. In my mind, I was saying, then there is no reason for holding these young ladies, because if she doesn't own the property or the properties that were taken, she has no locus, she has no power or authority to bring any action against them, whether criminal or civil. So I went to see them, and then I understood what it really is. It's a case of unlawful detention and malicious prosecution, and the Constitution is clear on that. If any person unlawfully detains another, that person must pay the detained person compensation. So that is what my clients have instructed me that we're going to do. And it is very possible that the police might need to investigate this further and bring charges against the right people who have committed some sort of offense.
Mr. Wade?
So sad, I listen, and like I've been always, saying that, seems that we are in a police state. And I spoke about, who looks out for these people that are being treated just the same way that the attorney said. And we know of many, and who will hold these heads, these people, like for instance the police, the ministers who derogate, who trampled past and present, trampled on our Constitution, use it against the people, right? Continuously. So, and I said it short, you see what happened with the attorney that was sent to prison, and then his other attorney, how he defend him. Like I said on my last show, we would like some more, people to start to defend all these other people that have been, treated in that way just because they do not have the ways and the means to fight for their constitutional right. And then we talk about the inhumane treatment, right? We talk about, a whole lot of abuses, and especially by the people who supposed to serve and protect us, right? We have lost that. And I come back to say, like, yeah, we are in a police state, right? And I hope that more people will start to hold these people accountable who misuse and abuse their power. And to who? Not to a minister or not to the Brisenia or not to Dean Barrow or not. No, to the poor little. It's a damn shame, man. It's a damn shame, right? To the poor little people who cannot, the word cannot defend themselves. I spoke about the way they treated a friend of mine, right? Again, I say they beat the hell out of that young man, right? And refused to issue him with a medical form and take him to the doctor, right? Refused to do that. So he bit the hell out of that policeman and he should have bite off his damn hand, right? And he was charged and he tell the magistrate that, you know what, the only thing I could have made was to bite this man because he choked me and I tell him, let me go. You know what happened? And that magistrate, you know, he said, should know it. I said, should know when, you know, man, come on. If you abuse somebody, you know, I mean, should have been able to weigh that. No, he find him guilty for biting the policeman was charged $800, right? You understand me? You know why? Because the policeman went and got a medical form, went to the doctor, and the doctor classifies him that what the guy did to the policeman was a harm. Right? You understand what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is that it's injustice and unfairness, and we have lost you know, the actually humane treatment that people should get. You know, the kind of policeman we have these days, you know, we have lost the real way of policing. And I have said earlier that the recruits, they need to be sensitized, you know, about our constitution, right? And lots of other, you know, things that they should be sensitized in there, which they are not. Right. Thank so I'll pass over. Not long. I want to pass it over to Ms. Spitz. Right?
Just a minute. Ms. Spitz, there's another section of the program that I wanted to launch, but we were waiting for Mr. Wade to finish so we can go back to you for the point that you said you wanted to. Yeah. I hope you hadn't waited too long and forgot the point, but please proceed. No, for not too long though. We can't hear you. Something wrong?
Her mic is muted.
Your mic is muted, Sharon.
It's coincidental that just yesterday and today, the matter of police picture taking came up. And I think it was just after the municipal election on New Road, there was a happening, a breach of two people's constitution. When I said two people, we all own the Constitution, but at Jitai Valley, the constitutional rights. They were going down New Road towards the gas station. And by the junction just before, two policemen were there. They tend to have a little checkpoint. So one on either side of the vehicle. The person driving slowed down, came to a virtual halt. And lo and behold, the passenger noticed that the police to the right, on the right-hand side of the road, and just a few feet ahead, was taking a picture of the car, the occupants, and the occupant said,
the location
you have no right to be taking the picture.
Legan on New Road.
Yes, correct. Exactly. The policeman, when they take the picture, now that no one GI or government issued telephone, that for his own phone camera,
which
you know what he said? Well. The person said, you know what? You don't have no right for the take that against the Constitution. He said, I know it's against the Constitution, but I know the car and the people laying at the car, I mean for take. That the police where they work over there, where they stand up, where they ask the driver, he said that for him picture. I said, no, why would you be taking the picture from there? You know what he said? That for prove that just to prove that he has showed up on duty at the spot. You know what he was told to do in no uncertain terms? Well, you better take that picture, delete that picture from your phone. Now, we all know, even Blind Eye James, they know Uncle say, that he said, okay, I'm deleting it. And he went through the motions. But Mr. Greg, you as a technician, person dealing with technology, you gentlemen, Mr. Brackett, scientist, Mr. Wade, any picnic in a standard 2, infant 2, know that believes you delete the picture, you could retrieve it, right? But you see what happened? He said he know. He want get an excuse because the person said, but policemen sign in, right? Or you have one book where you could whatever. And they never have just one policeman on duty at a point. But this the way they come to it's so pathetic. And one other thing I want to offer, we could in sarcasm call out and say that no one police state. But when I play into them people's hands, what we have to be adamant and repeat and say, this is a democracy. This is not a police state. This is a freedom of Belize. This is a common law country. This is a Westminster Parliament. This is not a dictatorship. No tyrants linger and so on, right? Separation of powers. And nowhere they tell you no. You see when Mr. Greg, you say, then they try sensitize, then they try beat down people and make one new normal. We have to say no. We have to take with first 30 seconds and bang it in at their head, bang it in our people. This is what we to protect, right?
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. I want to go to another part of the program right now, and I'm going to do a little reading, and hopefully we'll get some commentary. We have about 20 minutes. I'll do a partial reading of a report from the State Department, the Belize annual report, and some of the things that they deal with here in this report. I want to deal with section C, where it says torture and other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment and other related abuses. The Constitution of Belize prohibits torture and other inhumane punishments, but there were credible reports. Now, this is the people from the State Department putting out their annual report. There were credible reports that law enforcement agents employed them, that is to say, some of these tactics. Through the end of August of 2023, the Professional Standards Branch registered 99 formal complaints against members of the Belize Police Department, representing a 43% increase of reports compared with all of 2022. The Belize Police Department Professional Standards Branch resolved 46 of the complaints. 38 were under investigation, and 15 cases are awaiting trial. Complaints include assaults, wounding and harm, unlawful arrest and detention, extortion, theft, and preventing the course of justice. The BPD, Belize Police Department, dismissed 10 officers as a result of complaints, and several other officers were fined or reduced in rank after being found guilty of offenses committed. In April of the same year, police officers Romelio Logan, Raidel Tech, and Jasmine Cobb were sentenced to 9 years in prison for the 2016 death of Edwin Ixpatek. It's a funny name. I'm trying to pronounce it correctly. Who had been detained for disorderly conduct. The judge found that the officers failed in their duty to care for the detainee in police custody. During the year, the prison authorities dismissed at least one security officer found guilty of unnecessary use of force on prison inmates. Prison and detention center conditions. There were reports of extended isolation of prisoners in cells that lacked adequate ventilation and sanitation. Abusive physical conditions. Officers arbitrarily used isolation in a small, dark, poorly ventilated punishment cell to discipline inmates, which is illegal and unconstitutional as well. Inmates and their legal representatives said the isolation room was fetid and and infested with snakes, scorpions, and roaches. Prison regulation requires a medical evaluation of inmates prior to isolation and, and including a maximum confinement of 14 days. But the regulations were not consistently followed by prison authorities, and at times, inmates were kept in isolation for more than 3 months, which is equal to 6 times as much. Uh, there's another little part here. I don't want to read the administrative part. I'll skip that. Arbitrary arrest and detention, which is what we were speaking to just now. This is how the United States government report deals with that subject matter as regards to Belize. The law prohibited arbitrary arrest and detention and provided for the right of any person to challenge the lawfulness of their arrest or detention. That is, if you have money, in court. Media reported allegations that the government sometimes failed to observe these regulations or requirements. Arrest procedures and treatments of detainees, which we just spoke to just now, the last thing we were commenting on. The law requires police to obtain search or arrest warrant issued by a magistrate except in cases of hot pursuit, probable cause, or in the presence of a firearm. Police were required to inform detainees of their right at the time of arrest and of the cause of their detention within 24 hours of arrest. Police were required to also bring a detainee before a magistrate to be charged officially within 48 hours, which we also commented on, and Ms. Pitts had commented on as well. The Belize Police Department faced allegations that at times police arbitrarily detain persons for more than 48 hours without pressing charges and did not take detainee directly to police stations and use detention as a means of intimidation to people in the general public. Police usually grant detainee timely access to family members and lawyers, although there were reports of persons held in police detention without the opportunity to contact family or seek legal advice. There was a functioning bail system for release pending trial. By law, the police officers in charge of a station or a magistrate court could grant bail to persons charged with summary offenses. The High Court could grant bail to those charged with indictable offenses, including murder, gang activity, human trafficking, possession of an unlicensed firearm, and specific drug trafficking or sexual offenses. The High Court generally reviewed the bail application within 10 working days, and according to some defense attorneys, officers in charge at certain police stations denied bail in some cases of summary offenses, even when legal provisions allowed for this right. I'll stop at that because it goes on and it's a long report, and we're just dealing with bits and pieces of it as we go along. And we're going to run out of time, and we don't want to do that. So I'll just throw that out there Greg, can I start with you for your comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're
As I
welcome.
have stated before, not only is our police department in violation of the 1950 Geneva Convention,
Mm-hmm.
they are also in violation of the human rights under the UN
Charter.
Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And we continue to see these things happen. And why are they happening? Because the government who is in power, who has a super majority that more than has the capability with all these learned attorneys in the house
Mm-hmm.
to make laws to bring peace and harmony in Belize. Instead, they are making informal laws that they are using against the people.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the common assault that was passed into law, which is also being used under authoritarian rule to help them to have a police state, which
Mm-hmm.
is silencing you, the people, stopping you from saying
Demanding
anything
accountability.
to these people.
Mm-hmm.
A prime example of that is, as we speak, if a police officer stops you and you say something to that police officer to defend yourself, and he does not like that, he can say he felt threatened, and you can be slapped with a common assault, which
Like the
carries,
officer, like the officer
which,
Greg,
right,
in the police station the other day with the gentleman, the man
right.
in Charles Street.
And let's not forget, it carries a 3 years sentence in prison, you know? So we have to really and truly watch what is happening, you know?
Uh, Mr. Wade, you want to
Thank
weigh in
you.
for a little bit
Thank
there on
you.
that side?
Thank you. Take a little 2 minutes there.
Okay.
Like you mentioned, Greg, police state, an authoritarian state, and like again, back to who are the ones that get caught up in these illegal acts. And I said in my last show that I invite the Human Rights Commission again to visit Belize, right? Because it continued to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and I invite them, right? And lastly, I like to say to the Belizean people, right, and people in a whole, there's a thing they call, discretion, right? Police, use your discretion, man, for petty offense. Why you abuse people and do them a whole lot of inhumane things just for a petty offense, right? Use your discretion. And
Mm-hmm.
another thing, my people, they have a thing they call police bail, okay? Police bail. And it goes along with your discretion, right? All that powers are invested upon you already, right? And I say this to say that, the police already have powers to arrest. I see no reason for a state of emergency and all the things that they're claiming that they're doing it for. No, the police already has that power to arrest. And man, again, I say, if you already know all the criminals and all the notorious gangbangers, because that's publicly what you know say, go and arrest these people, man. Not subject a whole city, right? Or a whole, class of people. No, if you don't know these people, like you say you do, go and arrest these people, man. Right? And stop passing, illegal, bogus state of emergencies, man, which is uncalled for. What we need is a state of emergency up north, the whole northern district, Mr. Prime Minister.
Mhm.
That's why we need a state of emergency now. And you have the authorities say, "Oh, not for worry, Belizean, no, just go still go across at Chatamal, but we're here and see the things that will soon happen, right?" And you know, everything in its own time will play out. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. Uh, Miss Pitts
I
is
think
still
she left.
here with us. Yes, she is.
I'm back. I had
Oh,
a
she's
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
Oh, no,
technical
she's back. She's back.
situation.
No problem. I don't know how much of what Mr. Um, Wade had said you may have caught on, or what Greg had said, or what I had said just before
I
you left.
mean, I caught
But
what you were saying fully, Mr. Leonard. Then Mr. Greg was touching on the UN convention and so
uh,
on with respect to the
okay,
um,
the floor is open for you to just make any general comments that you'd like to
yeah.
make in regards to what you heard at that
Just
point.
one I wanted to make, please,
Uh-huh.
is the matter of what you presented, Mr. Leonard, from that report. If it is that you said that the 3 officers responsible for the death of Mr. Patik or something were
Uh-huh.
sentenced to 9 years.
Uh-huh.
And but what I'm trying to clarify is they mentioned neglect, did it not? That the judge found neglect?
Right. They were negligent. They
Yeah.
didn't provide it for his safety and well care. You
Did
know.
not provide for the safety and welfare. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Brackett. I didn't get to read it, but thank you very much for that because it brings to mind, and I'll say it quickly. In law, sometimes we have some cases like Caldwell inadvertence. We go to intention, inadvertence, and certain things, which might be the difference between in manslaughter and
Mhm.
so on, right? Where might
Right.
have
The
culpability
gradation
or
of the
otherwise.
crime.
But
Uh-huh.
what I want to say is that that is very instructive because here we have a Supreme Court judgment, and maybe the officers are entitled to their, if they're going through their appeal. But what we have, you said what? Please repeat. Negligence,
Right.
where they were responsible for
For
their
the care of
safety.
the right. Once you take somebody into custody, you're assuming the responsibility for that person's health
Okay,
and well-being and safety.
no,
That's what.
no, no.
Sorry.
Remember when we had the scenario where the compol was saying, and I was saying you don't need any conference to decide any policy. But remember where it was that the family complaining that that man was out there bleeding on the street.
Mm-hmm.
It was, if it was a situation where members of the public, one, the police who would have, if the police were saying to members of the public who would have come to the rescue, family, stranger, everybody, stay back, you can't deal with him, he's under all detention, right? And then the
They,
police did not take him to hospital promptly. Wasn't that neglect? Had he died,
exactly.
wouldn't those 2 police or 3 police or 4
You
police or
would wash their
however
hands.
many have been in the same situation?
Mm-hmm.
They must understand what they're playing with, And the commissioner of police cannot pretend that this thing is some philosophical question or it's not a very clear position. So I'm really grateful, Mr. Brackett. Sometimes they think they're not better law because it come out as, or, illustrated better because it come out on a report, But sometimes it's good for these people to see that eyes are watching from outside, right? And scoping, right? And sometimes when they chance people out there, then people have relatives and extension and human rights people belong to all various countries internationally, right? So
That's what
that,
the report was.
Mr. Brackett, was a crucial thing as to when they detain. And when they have somebody on the street that bleed out, you have detained that person, carry on to the hospital, medical doctor. And another point you mentioned from the observation either by the judges or the report itself, repeating what the judges said, or the court said, Mr. Brackett, is about the driving around. Mr. Brackett, we could have a whole show on that. When police drive people around, they torture them. Or sometimes people have the notion out there that then they wait for them expire. I am not
That's what it's
joking,
for.
people have reported that. Now, even if the police and they said do that, you have to watch the public too, so that they know they exaggerate. But it does not come as a shock. And I will yield my time by saying, when these things happen, they must never cease to shock us. We not forget used to it. There must be a public outcry. The conscience of the people of Belize cannot be silenced.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fitz. Very emphatic statement and timely statement. I just want to just a second. Let me just. Our time is running out. We're at the run out time now. So I'll just no, I can't do that part right now. I'll just make a personal summary, my one closing statement. No, somebody's trying to get in on it, but my closing statement for tonight is that in Belize we have an ombudsman office that is being occupied and filled by a favorite person of the Prime Minister, or a favored person of the Prime Minister. And apparently, when people go and try and make complaints, they leave the place as if they don't feel like they got enough help or enough attention or enough. That office needs to recognize, or the person holding that office needs to recognize that that's an independent office with the powers vested in it to give people who feel aggrieved some sense of comfort, if not some effort, to be able to remedy or deal with some of the issues that comes to that office. But I'll go a little further, and I'm going to say we don't really have, as you stated a little earlier, Ms. Fitz, an organization in Belize that takes up these cases for people and provide them the legal support and fight these cases on their behalf, like they have out here in the United States, like and American Civil Liberties Union or any such entity there in Belize. You do have the organization that try to provide some legal advice, legal services to people, but that's not the same. People still have to end up in court and they have to deal with lawyers. And if they don't have money to get a lawyer to support them, then they get walked over. And in some instances, as is in the case of this gentleman, will bite that police officer, that judge made an error in ruling the way they rule on that case. Because the judge had within the power and authority vested in them to inquire into the case a little bit more so that the judge could have found out why is it that officer ended up getting bite. That gentleman never just run off the street, running to a police station and grab one officer and decide to try to eat off the hand. I mean, that man bite that officer because he tried to tell the officer that he needs some ear. They had just pepper sprayed him. Therefore, while he was being choked, by the pepper spray, as well as the officer, the choker, the man is grasping for the last bit of air to try and save a life. So the only thing he figured he could do, regardless of whether or not it was a police officer that was holding him, which normally you should not be assaulting no police officer. In the olden days, you would have gone to jail just for assaulting an officer wearing the uniform. But in modern society, you have to recognize that some of these officers are scoundrels and scofflaws, and they commit crimes under the color of law, and then the system turn around and victimize them, the people who are committing crimes against, such as this person, this young man. He bite the officer because he wanted to, regain his. I mean, he felt like he was losing his life, and the officer refused. At that, the officer was not in the right. He was not exercising his responsibility adequately by trying to choke this gentleman more than he had to. He was not just using needed or required force. He was actually trying to hurt the young man. And that in itself is a crime. He was not brought up for discipline on that. Instead, the judge never inquired why is it that he got bit, because then you may hear the young man part of the case that he had to bite the man for making it. And then the judge should have then say, okay, well, this officer was not performing his function as a peace officer. He was abusing his power and authority vested in him to aggravate this gentleman's situation more. He was already pepper sprayed. And he had finished trying to work and stop him from get gas for the last breath a year. So that's why when Mr. Weird say should I bite off your whole hand or whatever, I laughed, right? I mean, not that it's anything laughable, but just the audacity of this man use his power, and then they not care the young man can get any medical attention or get a report for the beat down way when they can. When the other one and take the other 3 officers and take a slam in at the, and beat up the young man, just bust him up. They never care if he can get no medical report, but the one where he bite, run down and get him medical report so he could use that against the young man. And he was successful in producing that, but they never make the young man produce no report successfully to show that he was also brutalized, which is why some cases get thrown out. When you carry a prisoner and you brutalize that prisoner, most judges in their right mind throws that case out, because the Constitution says you're not supposed to dish out no inhumane treatment to nobody. No police officer is empowered to be judge, jury, and executioner at the same point.
Quickly, I like to say this, they keep doing the same thing over and over, and still you
They're
have
not
the
held to account.
heads of department just try to cover them up. Although sometimes they have video to show and they still try to justify it. So
We're at 36 right now.
that, right?
Mr. Wade, take another 1 minute now, please.
So Miss Pitt.
Yeah, I was going to pass. I was going to give her another couple
Yeah,
minutes.
give her my minute. It's okay.
Let Greg call us off the show, no? Because at 5.
She could take my minute, so she have to.
Okay. Ms. Pitts, you want to make a comment before, and then maybe turn over to Greg so he could close off the show for us?
Yes.
Just want to say thanks to everybody. And I look forward to seeing Mr. Morrison soon, because I hope I'm not some like bull-reg person when I answer him, but his questions
he has another show that he attends on Wednesdays.
So
he can only come on Fridays or Mondays.
No? Thank you.
Thank you very much, too, and God bless. Greg, could you close out the show for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that malicious persecution and arbitrary detention is alive and living well. And I would hope that the Belizean people, when they are detained or being picked up by the police, does not go into the detention assisting the police into convicting them. It is best not to say anything until you have legal representation, because, and I know my good friend Ms. Fitz knows this very well, there are certain cases where people are being picked up and are being accused, and they go ahead and sign papers, and they end up in a court of law without any evidence against them, and they have to prove they are innocent. So I would say to them to be careful. Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, I'm not hearing.
One statement.
Something with my phone right now.
Okay, one statement, quickly. What our police officers are being encouraged with right now, the way things are going, is for them to continue committing crimes under the color of law against unarmed and defenseless civilians, and then turn around. And it's like over here in America, these officers then beat you down and then carry you in and say resist arrest and charge you for another charge on top of the beat down we'll get.
That's what
do. All our officers are becoming accustomed to in Belize, and it's a sad situation because it ought not to be and should not be tolerated by the government. But the bottom line is that when they come and ask you questions and you don't answer any questions, then turn around and say, well, they are authorized to ask you questions. If you don't answer the question, you are resisting arrest, or you're not cooperating with them, or which we know, Greg, we dealt with that before on cases, international cases, that when we started out this legal show, where it says that no officer can walk up to you and ask you no question. But these that are putting that in the new laws, then when they make bogus laws that are unconstitutional, and they're trying to make the people believe that because they made those laws with their supermajority, it means that the law is what they say it is. But if that matter goes to court, it's going to get struck out more likely than not. Sorry, Greg.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
to add on to what you just said, I would like to say we're living in a time when our people must read up on their constitutional rights. Because what is happening here today, if you read and you follow up on the criminal code and on the police act, you will see that it goes inside our constitution, and section 5.5 of our constitution is enforceable and is alive and living well. As far as to the police, I will specify this again tonight. It is not a crime to run away from the police. Majority of people sometimes hear a gunshot and they run, and the police tend to want to pick them up as a suspect. It is not a crime to run from the police if you do not want to have any contact with them. That is your constitutional right. The only time you cannot run from the police is if they come up to you and touch you and say you are being arrested or you are being detained. That is when you can be also charged for resisting.
And that is when if they just do that arbitrary and capriciously or target you as an individual for some personal reasons, that they can be held accountable as well for malicious prosecution. Okay? Because after they put you under arrest, you're legally supposed to comply with what the laws are. But the police officers, some of them don't even know the law. And they give you illegal commands for you to obey. And when you don't obey those illegal commands, they want to beat your butt down on the ground. So they need to be trained like what Mr. Wade always said. Good night. Thank you very much. Great show. Enjoyed it, Mr. Wade. Greg.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Mr. Chairman, at this time I would like to go to Ms. Pitt for the closing.
Okay.
Ms. Pitt, if you kindly will close the show for us.
Sharon?
Can you close it? Can you give us a closing
I just
remark?
want to say quickly, notice how just discussing one little, well, not little, every part is big. Just a lot of the discussion focused on constitutional liberties or freedoms. And you see how the examples come out in the life and well-being and freedom of our people. So constitutional law is not out there in a lofty position that only lawyers have to whisper about. Constitution affect people, constitution protect people, and everyday people must defend the constitution. Like in the US, people say my Miranda rights. In Belize, people, old time people used to be well read, and they used to honor the British. My constitution, freedom to silence, right? My liberty. Police officers were respected, they garnered respect, and people of old used to be able to say they helped the police. And we want that, we want goodwill and relations. But the police have to understand from the top to the bottom, and the functionaries of state and government, Belize is a democracy.
Amen,
and we will live
Ms.
for this democracy, and we will die for this democracy in protecting it. And that's not understated. I believe I'm in the company of people who understand the importance, the vital importance for the existence of the country and the people.
Amen.
Countries were founded on give me liberty or give me death. And it's not just poetic, it's not for the dust heap of history. That is how we go forward as a people and as a nation.
And that is,
Thank you.
Ms. Spitz, the reason why we have decided to dedicate this effort on this show to educate our people about the Constitution, because we saw where these guys were hell bent with the idea of wanting to make changes to it and not trying to let the people get to know what is in it and what is it that they want to change from it.
That's it right
So
there.
they spent millions of dollars with a constitutional reform commission and has done not even half as much as we have done on the show over that same period of time. But we can't make that stop. So we move forward and we do the little part that we can play to make up the difference. But that difference will never be made up, because even though the Constitution is just 100 and odd pages, just a little over 100 pages, most Belizeans have not read it, studied it, learned it, or understand much about it, and they are expected to vote on whether or not to keep it or to throw it out for something new that these guys are trying to. And if the laws that these guys have been making recently is any indication of what they're after, then we are in for some serious problems in the future if they ever get to change the Constitution. That's why I wish that they
Well
move
said,
on and
Mr. Brackett.
thank you very
And
much,
I
everybody.
will close
And God
with
bless.
this. With all the informal laws that the present government is
Uh,
making,
Greg,
they have went right back to the past government, and they are now throwing Section 69(9) of the Constitution and all. And I hope the people would go and read that. With that said, good night to the Belizean people at home and abroad, and thank you for tuning in to this 137 edition of Belizean Affairs. Kindly tune in on Monday when we deal with the northern border issue. I can guarantee you that, as I always say, they do what, gentlemen? Tell
tell
them
them
who.
yourself.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
How are your human rights protected? The European Convention on Human Rights includes freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, right to life, liberty, equality, family life, right to a fair trial, freedom of religion.